What if everything you thought was making your life easier was actually making everything harder? This leader learned that lesson the hard way, and it changed the way he leads forever. Stay tuned for another great episode of Bad Boss Confessional. Hi, I'm Beth Fahey, and this is Bad Boss Confessional, where real leaders get honest about the mistakes that made them better. Before we dive in, a quick thank you to our sponsors for making this show possible. Do you love running on EOS? Try Streti, the EOS platform people love. Native integrations and extra features help you manage people, projects, process, and engagement. Connected to your favorite EOS tools and all in one place. You love EOS. It's time to love the platform you're running it on. Try Streti free at streti.com. That's STRETY.com. Streti, the EOS platform people love. Let's be honest, hiring the right people is hard. That's why I love Titus Talent Strategies. Their whole person hiring approach helps you find and keep A players who align with your values, and they back it with an industry leading guarantee. Best part? Titus Talent Strategies is included in the Entrepreneurial Toolkit for companies running on EOS. Check them out at titustalent.com/EOS. Today's guest is a certified EOS implementer, a former college athlete and coach, a three-time entrepreneur, and a father of eight, which probably qualifies as its own MBA. Based in Indianapolis, Josh Hauser has built his practice around a simple but powerful mission to reach and teach as many people as he can, helping them find joy, success, and humor that life can bring in business and beyond. Welcome to Bad Boss Confessional, Josh.
I appreciate you having me. It's always great to find out that some of my bad boss confessionals need to be heard by other people so they don't do it. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you having me.
Yeah, I mean, that's the point, right? Is one, it's just to lower the temperature so that people don't feel like such a doofus, right?
Oh,
Because
yeah,
because I think
absolutely.
we think, gosh, I should be doing this perfectly. I've
Yeah.
been on the job a whole week.
Yeah. Where'd that education come from? You got to pay for wisdom, right? And how do you pay for wisdom? Most of us pay for it through stumbling, bumbling, fumbling. We usually don't pay for it through the education of listening to a podcast like this and saying, "Holy smokes, don't do that. Don't go touch that electric fence. Somebody else already did, and they gave me a lesson of not to."
Yeah. So this brings me to something that, when I read eight kids, first of all, I'm just like,
All the same wife. It's all us. We're not Catholic. We're not Mormon. We know what caused it. So let's get all that out of the way. We didn't have cable. Let's just call it what it is. If Netflix had been around, we might only be at four, but we'll just keep it there.
okay. Well, my husband's one of 13, so I totally
Oh,
get.
he wins. He wins.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah, no, but it's just I get the big family dynamic, and
absolutely.
it's cool. I love having so many brother and sister-in-laws,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
it's a great family, loud, but great.
I don't know what you're talking about. Everybody sits in silence and no one ever gets into arguments at our house and everything's as smooth and just like being great bosses, we're just great parents. Everything is just as simple as it gets. We've never made a mistake there either.
That's awesome. So tell me, what kind of sports did you play? Give me a little rundown of your career before you became an implementer.
Yeah, so long story short, I'm an Indiana kid, so I could shoot a basketball well enough to get my education paid for. So went on to play college basketball. For some reason, the NBA didn't feel like people would pay to listen to me yell "help" and switch all the time, and so I went right into teaching and coaching. It's ironic that we talk about what bosses and ultimately do, which is a benefit and can be a curse. It's kind of my curse, if you will. We'll get into that, but went right into coaching. Taught geometry and algebra two. And as you alluded to, my wife and I had the reproduction issue. And so as we kept having children, we realized that her education degree and my education degree was going to have to take a change as we needed to pay some bills. And so entrepreneurship came knocking. I took the leap, and my pain for wisdom was a lot of bumbling, a lot of scraped knees. I do appreciate that I fell forward and had enough people around me, but it was built a hotel and a health club and a conference center, and then built a ton of offices with a company called Farmers Insurance Group here in Indiana, and all on the entrepreneurial side. And just thankful as I look back, 80% of your identity, most people think is from the past. And I look at it, that 20% of identity is my past. It's all the lessons I've learned, because the 80% that I'm chasing is who I want to be. But that 20%, man, it left a lot of Rolodex in this head that you're like, don't do that again, don't do that again. Or when you see somebody else saying, hey, can I ask you a couple questions before you make that decision?
Yeah, and that's the thing I was gonna ask you, like, so I know you have 8 kids, but where do you land in your family? Are
Yeah, I'm the oldest of three brothers by a lot, so I'm more of an
Mhm,
uncle than I am a brother, and my wife's the oldest as well. So you got two oldest raising kids. She was valedictorian in college, so
mhm,
she's like, we're completely yin and yang. I went to college to play basketball, and I couldn't believe they signed my degree. And she went to make sure that she gave the speech at the graduation, and I was like, why can't you hurry up? Because I got buddies who want to meet me afterwards.
uh
But we have formed a pretty good partnership relationship, and obviously marriage together, and we're business partners in our business as well. So we share in that as well. And she's an author and a writer. So if I ever write, it's not my writing. I promise you. What you just read, whatever you pulled from, she wrote it. I'm a math major. Everything's geometry. It's just here's the problem, here's the information. Let's build a proof, and then she corrects all my grammar.
Wow. Well, opposites attract, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, and I think she's pretty as heck. So you just politely called me ugly, but we'll work through that. That's all right. So,
Not at all, not at all, Josh. So, I'd love to learn from you, and so would our guests, and so do you have a confession that you would like to share with our group?
sure, sure. And it really ties back into that conversation of I Reach Teach is the name of my company. It's Reach Teach Eliminate. Um, and it always was Reach Teach. And the eliminate didn't follow until after I've gone through some of the life events as I get vulnerable with you guys. And so as a teacher and coach, I thought that all entrepreneurship was just being a teacher and coach. And
Mm,
so just teach and coach and teach and coach. And you never heard lead and manage. You never had those word into. You just thought I can just teach them and coach them and teach them and coach. And so I'm about halfway into a successful launch of my farmer's career. Just made top 6% of the company, and we went through what would be called a rate crisis, if you will,
mm,
which just means a hailstorm came through Indiana and wiped out all the profits we'd made in 6 months, and so we had to raise rates. And the leadership and the management that I didn't have during that time exposed that my teach and coach had. And I'm a positive intelligence guy. So if there's a book to read that changed my life, is positive intelligence. And there's all these judges that you have, and my victim judge came out to play,
mm,
which being a teacher and coach, when I didn't get a call, think about this: standing on the sideline coaching a game, I didn't get a call. Who did I yell at? I yelled at an official. It was their fault. It was never my fault. Does that make sense to you? And then
mhm,
my
mhm,
players, I didn't see this when I'm 25 to 29, that my players would see how I would react, and then they would carry that reaction. Does that make sense?
mhm, yes,
Took me till I was in my mid 30s to realize that when something was being done, it wasn't being done to me, it was just being done. And that how I reacted affect all of those others that reacted, and I wasn't leading through that change. And so what happened is the ripple effect of the Josh victim, if you will, played all the way out, and all these companies that I built, all these practices I built, all became victims as well, because as goes the leadership team, goes the rest of the organization, as goes in this case the leader. And so rather than lead and manage through that, I tried to teach and coach through that. And the reality is I was just making tsunamis of waves, diving back into language, diving back into all the things that you would think at the time, as I look back, just made complete sense. And the reality is, I was us against them. Let's grab some pitchforks and some torches, and we'll charge the castle. And the reality is, nothing was being done to us. Everything was being done for the greater good of the company, and we needed to make adjustments. And that really started with how I was looking at it, and that's where that word eliminate came in, because I had to eliminate the things that I couldn't control. I had to eliminate the things that were out beyond my, let's call it, wherewithal of decision making, and start to hyper focus in on the things that we could actually do. And that's where the reach and teach came in. Let's reach what is the why of what we're doing this. Let's get down to, without value, price is the only consideration. And I hadn't spent any time with that with any of my folks, if that makes sense. So we spent, as a leader, I just drive the price, be the best at discounts. I never drove the value, the value, the value. If and so it got exposed. Just, I mean, I'm talking about exposed drastically to the point where I had to terminate people, had to close some offices, had to go backwards. I had to do the Paula Abdul, two steps forward, one step back. She made a whole living off that song. I just went ahead and lived it. So I had to take two steps back, create that momentum, the revolution, if you will, to evolve. So it was heavy. But then once you got there, then you're able to teach a little bit differently. Now you're once you reach and find out, let's get beyond the price. Let's get beyond what's being done to us. Let's reach what we can control. Let's reach what we can do. And this sounds terrible. Maybe as I was a good enough basketball player, I never did that. Maybe as I had enough good athletes when I was coaching. It's like, what is it? Effort and technique will beat talent all the time, if that makes sense to you, or 80% of the
Mhm,
time.
mhm.
And although I always think I put in good effort and always worked on technique, I relied a lot on the talent of those around me and my talent as well, and didn't realize that talent underdeveloped is actually, it can be a detriment. It can be a curse. And so I had to apply that reach and teach to myself and go through some heavy, heavy lifting, build a board of directors around me, if you will, like 5 people that I met with monthly, just to, I
Mhm.
always called it, bring your Vaseline and crowbars to pop my head from my butt because it's in there pretty good. And that was the statement that we made, because I thought wisdom was you learn from me, not that I had to learn from others and learn from my mistakes.
Yeah.
Well, I just exposed a lot. I want to lay down on the couch and cry for a second. Is that all right?
Totally fine. It happens sometimes on the confessional, but, you know, it was an epiphany for me, and I think it's an epiphany it sounded like it was an epiphany for you too. At some point, you reach a point where you realize, "Oh, I'm the problem."
Wow.
Like, "Me?
Wow. Yeah,
I'm the problem?" Right, like
correct. I'm the water in the sand that's not letting it flow through. Come on. That can't be me.
and when that happens, it's like an existential crisis. You're truly questioning your own reality, like, everything that I used to think is now flipped on its head, and I need to think about things in a different way if I wanna save this business and possibly keep me out of bankruptcy, like, these things happen.
You start taking, I always say, I stop making bets. Bets in my mind are when I can trust my gut, but I got some data that resonates to you. I stopped making bets and started just doing guessing only. And so
Mhm.
I stopped studying data, and I was just, put your finger up and here's what the wind is and here's how I'm gonna, and you stop doing the things. Well, let me phrase that. You get exposed that you haven't done the things that you need to do to reset your foundations during rough times. Because I love, Gino Wickman talks about in the book Shine, the 262 principle, that every decade of business has 2 amazing years that you can't predict, 6 years that you grind, and then 2 years that are catastrophic. And we think we're preparing for the 2 amazing years. And the reality is you got to prepare for the catastrophic years. And that's when, to your point, you get exposed if it's you. Because the catastrophic years is when the leaders really step up. Because the good years and the grind years, you're just trying to remove things out of the way, get obstacles out of the way. But the catastrophic years is when everybody turns to you. You're Captain Jack Sparrow. You climb the mast, and they're like, "Hey, I can't see Tortuga, dude. Where are we going?" And your compass is spinning just like Sparrow's is. And you got to make some decisions. How do you settle that compass down and get back to north and get everybody going that direction? Man, what an exposure. Just got exposed like no other.
Yep. When we had COVID happen a few years ago, and I had just started my practice, I was a couple years in, and I had a handful of clients. And I went to a QCE, and one of the implementers, QCEs are our training for those of you that aren't familiar with EOS. And Josh and I go to this every quarter. And somebody stood up and said, one of my clients said that COVID is the best manager that we ever had because COVID forced us to actually be leaders and managers and make the tough decisions, have the tough conversations. And Don't let a good crisis go to waste.
Oh, I love it. It says I adopted two phrases for this year, and this ties into exactly what you said. Number one is I didn't want to work this year. I only wanted a purpose. So if anything I'm doing is work, then I'm not doing what I need to do. So that was my internal side. My external impact I want to make is I see too many companies doing things that are easy, and they're not trying to make things simple. And they think that easy and simple are the same. This is Josh and 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Easy is too complex. Easy is just riding along, not doing the audits, not digging in below the scenes, not going two questions deep, not doing the quarterly conversations, and as leaders, not having these, you know, when can you get together with the group and say, here's my biggest F up last week and here's what I learned? And just saying, I need to do that once a week because there's so much to learn from that and listen to everybody else's. Whereas simple is the hard work. That's the hard preparation because you got to do the hard work to make life simple. And so I've really looked at this year, and what I just heard you say is so clear to me is that easy creates complexity, hard creates simple. COVID created a hard situation for a lot of businesses, and they realized they've been doing things easy and it was making things too complex. And once they dealt with the hard, all of a sudden, this sounds crazy, life became more simple. So that's my battle. That was 15 years ago. I wish wisdom would have tapped me on the shoulder and say, "Hey, dude, you're taking the easy way, and complexity is going to hit you. And when it does, you're not ready. You're standing on wet cement. You're not standing on a solid foundation." And so then you got to go put the hardening in, which is that's you got to tear things down. You got to build things back up, including your own confidence and the whole "wow, it's me." And then you realize a better me is a better we, and I haven't spent any time on a better me in a long time.
Yeah. So you brought up the book Positive Intelligence, which
Absolutely loved it. Yeah.
great book if you haven't read it. And I probably have it on the bookshelf right behind me. I was at one point, and I think this was around when COVID hit, is when they were really coming on the
Yep.
scene and they were
The Czar
offering
was really getting after.
a coaching program and things like that. And I got super into it, and it was really interesting to take the assessment because, like every assessment you ever take, it's like it's all right there. It's like, oh
Yep.
yes, everywhere
Yes.
I go, there I am again, right?
Correct. And I love that assessment because it tells you who shows up during crisis. Right?
Yes.
That person that you needed, that you felt like when that's the person who gets me through it, and you're realizing that person's actually keeping me from being where I need to be at. That's actually distracting me. I'm using that as my crutch when the reality is because I don't know how to stand on my own 2 feet. And when you get to the point where you can quiet that judge down, whether it's a hyperachiever or restless or pleaser, whatever it is, and really get into this is what the situation needs, and I need to grow into that situation rather than, 80% of my past is who I identify with, and this is part of my past, so it's coming along for the ride here. Just to your point, it hit me right in the face meat. Like I felt like he was bruising my face every time I heard it, like he's following me around.
Yeah. I mean, and the work that then you do, right? Because there's a program that you
Gotta
follow.
go through
There's,
PQ reps.
like you're
Yep.
everybody
You gotta
knows that's
breathe.
read the book.
Yep.
I'm
Yep.
rubbing my index finger and thumb together right
Yep.
now for those of you that are
Okay.
listening. And it does calm you down. And like sometimes still in sessions, I mean, I should get back into it really. But, I'll find myself like, okay, this is not about you. And it really is about dismantling the ego.
There it is. That because you don't realize how much that shows up, and your ego. People will think of ego as like this, arrogance, and the reality is the difference between humble and arrogant is really just the word excessive. Ego's adding that excessive side. So it's bringing that excessive to the table. And if you can just quiet that ego, your arrogance can all of a sudden turn into humility, which is now looking at how am I affecting the room, and the conversation's not about me. It's not about, and you've heard me say this before, it's not about people, it's about problems. It just happens that people have problems. Maybe it's my problem and I'm bringing it to the room and I don't realize that. Your ego won't let you see that. It won't realize that you're the one who's actually adding to the problem. Write down and listen. And to your point, do your PQ reps. Such an impactful statement.
Yeah, it's again simple, right?
Yeah. But it's hard.
Because you have to remember to do it.
Correct.
You have to catch yourself in the moment when it's happening, like when you're triggered. So
Yeah.
usually, like if I'm in a session or like I'm afraid to say something, I see something going on and I'm like, oh, I don't know. Do I enter the danger? Do I or if if there's some other reason that I'm getting triggered, and I find myself will just, okay, it's not about you. This is not about you. This is their time. This is, you know, how can you serve best in this situation? What's a question that you can ask? It's not a leading question so that you get satisfied, right?
Correct.
So it's like it's so much work of getting out of your own head and being there for other people and just in service.
Correct. I love. I have my reminders. I have two statements I say on the regular. Curiosity cures all conflicts. And so the moment that I feel there's conflict in the room, or if I'm part of the conflict, I'm going to get to curious. I'm going to start asking what's really causing that. Sometimes it's in my own head.
Mhm.
What's really causing this conflict? And then when I feel like it's time, what we call an EOS, enter in the danger zone,
Mhm.
and I feel like I got to dive there. The term I use and I teach it with my teams is 20 seconds of courage, 5 minutes of awkward. And I'll say it just like that with that little question at the end. Everybody okay? I need 20 seconds of courage and 5 minutes of awkward. I got too many things going on in my head and I got to get out of it and get us all to the same page. Because that's really all it takes. It takes 20 seconds of courage to say, hey guys, real quick, I'm really making this about me right now, and that's not fair to the room. So I want to flip my head a little bit. And then it's 5 minutes of awkward for everybody to get, let's just call it their crap sandwiches on the table. Okay, now we're just going to sift through it and get everything where it needs to go. And so those are, I say those are part of my PQ reps. Curiosity cures all conflicts. Don't make a statement here, ask a question. And then, okay, ask the question, but get permission. Do I have 20 seconds of courage and 5 minutes of awkward just to take us to this next step? Because I think we're stuck and that's going to be our next place. But I want to know because I hate living in that kind of sort of sometimes think believe state.
Mhm.
I want to live in that no state. Like think about the word no, KNOW, with the NO big and capitalized. And let's say in a room, that's what our job is to get people to know or say no, and
Mhm.
I actually think that's part of our leadership development. That's my 35-year-old lived in kind of sort of sometime. Just and it is so much easier because there's exit doors with kind of sort of sometimes. But when the crap hits the fan and you have to know or say no, because 70% of our problems come from what we say yes to. I can prove that. That's half my life, right? How do we have the discipline to do that? And that's why this book and Shine with Gino, those are the kind of books I realized I had to work on me, better we. I had to get to that state because I could coach and teach. I couldn't lead and manage. And there's a big gap in that.
So have you gotten better at it, do you think?
Humbly, yes. And here's what I found: no is a complete sentence, so you don't have to explain it. And so I stopped. My teacher and coach wants to explain no. And now my leader manager just says no is fine. In the room, I see a lot of things. I can see what I do, so I use the terms feel, felt, found all the time. Hey, I understand how you feel. I felt the same way. Here's what I found does not make it right or wrong. But because I made those mistakes, rather than trying to give answers, I try to use that feel, felt, found and get from the emotional side to the logic side because you can't solve emotional problems with logic. You have to get the emotion out first. Um, but what I find it more is probably in my family life, in my kids' life, where and whether I like it or not, lives run in parallel, right? Your business and your companies run in parallel.
Mhm.
And so I find practicing at home or practicing at I love ordering the wrong food for my family at meals and seeing how to handle it because we have to be vulnerable and realize it was just a mistake and we don't know who made it, but let's just work through it. And so I literally practice those things. I have a saying that weeds in your yard are like weeds in your life. Let's go pull some weeds. And that's where we have the conversations in our yard about the hard stuff. But you got to set time to do the hard if that resonates. And so if we only set it in the business world and we're not setting it in our clarity breaks or in our family life, then you're just practicing it. You're not actually becoming part of your DNA. It's not you're not becoming who you want to be. You're just pretending who you want to be. I don't know. That's really deep. I didn't know I was going to talk about this today.
No,
Woo.
well, it's the confessional, so I just have to I marvel at your ability to your quips and your sayings and your quotes and things like that. Tell me about that. Did somebody
That really came from the PQ side, to be honest. When you do PQ reps, you got to have little simple reminders. And so I call them eyelid tattoos. I make a set of eyelid tattoos that when I start to go down a journey, Little things
Mhm.
pop in my head. The past is a place of reference, not of residence. And so when I start to feel like I'm relitigating something that happened, that'll pop in my head and I'll say those things. Or I'll say that dog won't hunt, meaning they keep trying to push somebody to do something. I'm like, dude, that dog won't hunt, or wet wood won't light. And I have to say those little things in my head to get my mind thinking about what we're back on track on. And probably because the English language has eluded me. But what I find is those little phrases, and maybe it's from sports, between every play. And if you're a Ted Lasso fan, they talk about the goldfish concept, right?
Mhm.
In basketball or football, between plays, they teach you to say things like, confidence, refocus between every play. Whether
Mm.
you just made the biggest play you ever played or you just messed up, what are you saying in between plays to get your mind reset? Because if you're this high, that means that's much that far to fall, right? If you're this
Mhm.
low, that's that much to climb. How do I stay in that level zone? And for me, it was just finding a series of little quips and sayings. That's one of my favorite things about going to QCE because there's 1,000 of them there,
Yeah.
but then I got to make sure I'm not just saying it so it sounds cool. I got to make sure it's affecting that I'm quiet in my victim, I'm quiet in my hyperachiever, and that those are allowing me for the room to make decisions because the answer's in the room. Whether you're running a company or an EOS implementer, the answer's in the room. Let's pull those answers out. And sometimes those low quips keep you from spewing the answer and allows other people that space.
Yeah, that's great. I was thinking like I need a quip for when I'm talking to myself in the bathroom mirror every morning and I'm putting my makeup on. I swear to God, I have a conversation every day and I find myself having this conversation and it makes me think of PQ and it's like, okay, so where are you feeling threatened here? What's going on? Why are you having this imaginary conversation with a person that isn't here who really doesn't have an axe to grind against you?
Isn't it hilarious? Saying it out loud, they talk about you got to name it to tame it. Sometimes just give it a name, And so, why is T Rex showing up right now? It's got short little arms. It's not going to do anything to hurt me. It doesn't even exist. But this T Rex is in my shoulder, saying, you walk in a room and it gets quiet. Everybody was talking about me. Well, even if they were, what's it matter? You weren't in the room. When a tree falls in the woods, we don't hear it. When people are talking about you in the room, you don't hear it. Just treat it the same way.
Yeah, exactly. So when I'm having my conversations to myself in my bathroom, just pretty much every morning, I'm saying, "Okay, there's something that your brain is trying to tell you. Your managers." So I talk with my coach about, your managers who are managing your emotions and telling you the voice. It's basically the nonstop dialogue that goes on in your head. What are
Yep.
your managers trying to tell you, right?
Yeah, I love it because what's abracadabra? Abracadabra in Hebrew, abracadabra in our world is what magic. It means
Mhm, mhm.
ta-da, right?
Right.
Abracadabra in Hebrew is we create as I speak.
Mm.
And so that moment that you're talking in the mirror to me, what I'm hearing you do is you're going through your abracadabra. You're actually creating what that manager, what they're telling you, and you're having a conversation with that person in the mirror saying, I know they're going to say that. I need them to say that out loud
Mhm.
rather than trying to I hate saying I don't want to get to the anxiety driven and worry. I just that doesn't it doesn't serve me.
Yeah.
Release all those things that no longer serve me. But what is my brain telling me to listen for? And sometimes I just have to speak out loud. And my wife will walk in to your point and I'm talking out loud and she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm not stroking out. Everything's good. We're
It's
fine."
just it's like
Yeah.
it's like, "No,
Yeah.
I'm just on the spectrum." Like,
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
I
And
have
what a wonderful gift
ADD,
to be on
okay?
the spectrum. Yeah. Yeah. I got ADD, capital ADD. Well, and I hope my wife doesn't listen to this. She has OCD, which I call CDO because she's OCD. She has to have an alphabetical order. And so there's that give and take. Does that make sense? So I open drawers around the house just to make sure she closes them. Does that make sense? Because that feeds her, and she gives me my space to talk to myself. And I believe naming it to taming it is critical. And so I'll just give it a name. That guy who's talking to you right now, you don't need him. I just go ahead and go back to bed. I'm good.
Yeah, yeah. It's so funny how our brains work and, how smart we can be and, like, figure stuff out and achieve so many things, and then, at the end of the day, we're these emotional creatures, right?
Correct.
And
Yeah,
the
and our greatest gifts are our muck ups. We don't like to talk about them, which is why your show is so valuable. To talk about your muck up out loud, right? The
Yeah.
the big mistake and deal with it. and then be able to laugh about it. That's the joy and humor that I like. Holy smokes. If I could go back and meet myself when I'm 35, although I can't do it physically, I would whip myself, right? I kick myself around like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But then why would I do that? Why wouldn't I reframe and be thankful for those lessons? Be thankful for all those things that we went through. And then say, okay, but I still got more to go through. Do I
Mhm.
want to go through it on my own? Or do
Right.
I want to shortcut it and surround myself with podcasts like this or people like you, or get my circle where they've probably experienced something that I'm about to go through, and if I'm open and vulnerable, they'll help guide me so it's not so bruised.
And I think that's the difference between that succeed and people that get stuck or fail, right?
Yep.
Is it's a choice and you decide that you want to get better. You
Yep.
decide that I'm going to take steps, surround myself with those people. And so be a sponge.
Oh my gosh. And then I tie it to aware, adapt, accelerate. You have to become aware that there's something that there's I'm a victim mentality. I gotta become aware of that and deal with it. Then I gotta make those PQ rep adaptations.
Mhm.
And then once I do that, that allows me to accelerate to the person I want to be rather than the person I'm trying not to be.
Yeah.
And so instead of running from who I was, I'm running to who I want to be. And I love when you'll see that in a room when a leadership team stops running from what they were and they start running to you're like, two things. Number one, that's amazing. And number two, we're about to get fired. But both of those are amazing. Those are great gifts because you want to see that. Once they know who they want to be and they put a system in to get that, it's no different than us as individuals. Once we realize who we want to be and we put some processes in place just to check with that, be it the people we're around, the books we read, or the steps we take on the daily. You know, heck, just get a journal out at night and write down what next day is. Half the time, 70% of your next day can be written what the night before. You just spend time doing little things like that.
Yeah. I love that point in the journey when we're with our clients and all of a sudden the problems they have are about growth.
Yes. Yeah. They're about, well, what's 27 going to be like? Then less about, you remember what happened in 24? That's when they've moved. That's why I use that term. The past as a place of reference.
Mhm.
That's when they're no longer residing. Because most of the times we start with a team, the past is a place of residence. And
Mhm.
you're just trying to get them to unpack. Can you please just get all the boxes out of that house? Let's get into the new house and let's unpack the boxes. And then let's decide where they go. And once they start deciding where the stuff's going to go in the new house, they stop thinking about everything they had in that old house. And man, it's hard. That's hard work.
Yeah.
It makes it simple.
Yeah.
It's easy just to continue to live in that, and that's just going to make things more complex.
Yeah, and that's the thing about EOS, right? It's a simple system. It doesn't
Hmm.
mean that it's easy.
No, it's not. It is not, because vision, traction, healthy are not easy. Any of those by themselves are hard. Put
Yeah.
all three together. Holy smokes,
Yeah.
that's the trifecta of hard.
And that, when you were just at my rollout event a couple of weeks ago, and
Which, by the way, killed it.
thanks. It was great to have you there. You were a real asset in the room. Um, and one of the things that we wanted to have happen is for people to realize one, that they are not failures just because their rollout didn't go the way that they wanted it to go. But it's not too late. You can actually
No,
fix it. You just have to go back to the tools and reteach them and all that stuff. But the point I was going to make is that there's work and work.
yeah. There is, and I'm going to add where my life is now, and if that work is feeding your purpose, it really doesn't feel like work.
That's right.
Yeah, it feels like I always call it's a plugged in phone all day, and the
Mhm.
battery never goes down.
Right.
Rather than unplug your phone and get to all your apps and have Waze going and have music going and your flashlight on, and by 2 o'clock your phone's dead and you're
Mhm.
looking to plug in again. When the work is fulfilling a purpose, that's a fully charged phone all day long.
Yeah.
Man, what a life to live.
Now you grew up on a farm, correct?
Somewhat. I grew up in farmland. My wife grew up on a farm, still has a family farm up north, and so, we like to go out there and we always like to say, as long as we can see the stars, it's a good day, right?
Uh,
You don't realize what it looks like to look up and see some stars. Good feet, good back, see the stars. It's been a pretty good day.
yeah. Yeah, the point I was gonna make here was that, I'm planting a garden right now. I'm very excited about it because there's a purpose, right? There's a harvest, things happen, so you don't mind, like, lifting, the the bags of soil and the mulch and going out there and weeding. And I was thinking about that. It's like, why don't I hate gardening? Like when I was a little kid, my mom made me go weed. I
Uh-huh.
absolutely detested it. And I was like, what is okra anyway? No one's going to eat this. But now as an adult, when I go to work on something, so to your point, if it has a purpose, if it's gonna feed people, if it's gonna make dinner more delightful or something like that, then for me, it's absolutely worth the work. But if you can't see light at the end of the tunnel, if you can't see where you're going, it's really hard. And I think the reason I became an implementer was because this system helps you get through the muck so much faster. But
I 100%.
you gotta do it. You gotta
I
do
love what you just described. Caesar, I can't think of Caesar's last name out of Miami. He's like amazing. One of my favorite guys.
Quintera.
When he has a break, thank you. When he has a breakout, I go to it. And I've stole this and I use it so much. He talks about the think, do, be. And so many people, when you first meet them, are in their think state where they're anchored to their past. And
Mhm.
so if you're gardening, if you're weeding, you're anchored to your past. Does that make sense to you?
Mhm.
When you start to plant, you're in your due state. You're putting things in. And as much as we love being in our due state, do, the reality is when you're doing because you're working on your future state or what we would call your B state. I'm guessing now that when you're planting, you can actually see the tomatoes
Oh,
on the
I know what it
table. You
looks
can
like.
see the zucchini. You already see it. So you're not actually doing anymore. You're actually being. There just
Mhm.
happens to be some work that goes along with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
When teams realize what I'm doing right now is actually, I can actually see what the outcome looks like by doing it. They
Mhm.
actually are not working anymore. They're purposing. That's how I present that. If that I'm trying to stop what I was doing, and so I got to do something now. Now they're working. And a lot of times we got to move them from that think to do is work,
Mhm.
but from the work to be is now purpose. You're not planting a garden, you're purposing future food. I can see we all have that, Chevy Chase, vacation where it's all fresh food on the table, and we're all in our, you got the apron and everyone's just, diving into beets. Kind of sounds weird, but think about that's how when you're thinking that way in garden, you're not gardening. You're actually planning for an event that's going to happen in the future from the work you're doing today.
Right.
And
Yep.
that's amazing. That's such amazing. But to your point, we as leaders, we have to get there. Because if we can't get there, how in the heck are we going to get somebody else there?
That's right. You gotta believe.
Oh my gosh. Think, do, be. What's the first two letters of the word believe?
Right, right,
Gotta be.
right.
Gotta be. Thank you, Ted Lasso, for the belief state.
Yeah. So much great stuff out there. Well, this has been a delightful conversation, but I have one more question for you before we go, Josh. So, one of the things that I ask all of my guests is if you were to get a tattoo somewhere on your body that either related back to the story that you told at the beginning or something else, we covered a lot of different topics here today. Something else we talked about, or something that you really have a lot of sentiment around. What would it be and where would it be located?
Okay, so I'm gonna give a combo answer. I got two of my buddies got these tattoos because I can't use them. One is progress over perfection. They wrote it in a fraction, being a math major, that makes complete sense to me. Another one got curiosity over judgment in a fraction. I think those are great tattoos. But I'm more of the infinity side and the ever growing of infinity, if you will.
Mm,
That we're in this infinite life where work on ourselves, apply it to the world, work on ourselves, apply it to the world. If you've gone through Gino Wickman's 10 disciplines, which I'm a big believer and fan of, it's the inner side and the outer side, and it's your peace and your impact and how they're always interrelated. And so there being an infinity symbol because my family's in the infinity symbol. This conversation's an infinity symbol because it's just a constant learning flow that doesn't stand still, that we can apply the lessons. Oh, where to be? Oh my gosh. Well, no one wants me to take my shirt off. I don't blame them for that. And so it'd have to be somewhere where I need to be able to see it because, right, we just like eyelid tattoos, it'd have to be somewhere on a forearm where I just want to be able to see it, so that in those moments where I start to, as my team used to tell me, as my head starts to enter, a different area of a different orifice of my body, that I look at that and be like, don't do that. Remember, there's lessons to be learned, and there's people in your life in that flow that you can go listen to. And so, yeah, I'd be in math, be in affinities, the ever learning style, and then the be it where I can visually see it. That'd be critical.
That's amazing.
How about you? Do you ever answer that question?
I always, I always try to dodge this question
Well done.
because
Well done.
because you know, I had Robert Hartline on here. I don't know if you know Robert yet, in our
Know the
community,
name.
and
Yeah.
he's an implementer out of Nashville, and my favorite my favorite response so far has been, "He's gonna get a QR code because it's gonna change."
Oh, well played. Oh, that's stolen. That what good ideas are borrowed, great ideas are stolen. That's stolen.
And I love that because, like, the thought of committing to something, but, I mean, I've been married for over 30 years. I mean, like, I'm not afraid of committing. I've
Yeah,
clearly committed my
absolutely.
life to EOS and what have you, but I don't know. I just have a, fascination with tattoos. I love art. All my kids are artists. I went to art school. Um, I think it's fascinating. I think what I'm afraid of is picking something and then seeing something I like better, and then wanting
Oh,
that, and then it becoming an obsession. And
yeah.
I
Then you're
as
inked
white
out. Yeah.
as, like, pasty as I am a canvas, and then
I
there would
can't
just
wait for your
I'd have neck tattoos.
2028
Yeah.
arm. You're gonna have a sleeve.
I'd have neck tattoos. I mean, like, the whole bit.
I love it. I love it. Well, I can't thank you enough for honestly, this I'll say this out loud, and I hope people. Half the time I was talking, I wasn't talking to you. I was talking to me, not because it was about me, but you're reminding yourself of these things. Just like you said, I'm reminding myself of the PQ things. And if
Hmm.
folks just did that, if they just listened to this, the things that you do on these podcasts, and listen to it, and hear the fact that, holy smokes, I'm doing the same thing. I just need to put some time into it. I think there's some positive out there.
Yeah. Or have a conversation, right?
Heaven forbid, and be vulnerable. Whoever's the most powerful person in the room is the one who's the most vulnerable. So go be
That's
powerful.
right. That's right. All right. Thanks, Josh. This was a great conversation.
Appreciate you.
Thanks to Josh Hauser for reminding us that the easy path is usually the complicated one, and that real simplicity takes discipline. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and share with friends who need to hear this. Thanks for listening to Bad Boss Confessional. We'll see you next week.